Welcome to Project Further, Episode 2. I'm April Ulmer, and here at Project Further, our goal is to provide a resource for girls in youth soccer and their families who have a desire to play the beautiful game at the highest levels. I'm joined in the studio again with my amazing producer, Lo Ballard. Hey, Lo.
Welcome.
All right. So if you missed the first episode of Project Further, what we talked about was exactly, why we started Project Further and our goal. We also let you know a little bit about me and my family. And so go check it out if you haven't already. So today we're going to talk about development, right, Lo?
Oh, yes. I'm excited, man. We had such a great conversation last episode that
Yeah, we did.
we have to continue it. We have to go a little bit deeper, right? Further, as you will say.
Exactly.
And I had a question.
Okay.
Because, as your producer, I love unearthing the stories of journeys. But one thing that I wanted to talk about was like you identifying that the girls needed more development and where that led you guys in your decisions forward. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. And so I know, we're going to talk a little bit more about, development and that whole story of how we got to that point. But once we realized that they needed more, right? The first thing we had to do is we had to go on the hunt for, create the opportunities for them, right? So the first thing I want parents to understand is that it wasn't easy. I mean, it wasn't easy at all. I mean, there were a lot of no's. There were a lot of, we can't do this, we can't do that. There were people who, just frankly said, hey, that's crazy, And so just to kind of tell you a little bit about where I started. So the first thing that I did was I said, okay, we know that she needs more development. Let me figure out the first thing that I should do. So let me reach out. I was a part of some groups on Facebook, youth soccer groups and things like that, because, there are people out there who know a whole lot about youth soccer, who have access to, coaches and resources, et cetera. So I was in one of those groups. And after we realized that we were looking for more, that's the first thing I did was I found a community, I reached out to them, okay? One of the things that some people recommended was private coaching. So I started asking questions in the area, okay, who are some private coaches? Where should I go? So there was a person that I work with, and her daughter, who's a high school student, worked with a private coach in Covington, which is about an hour from here. And so I called up this coach who was a young man from England who had played semi-pro over in England.
Yeah.
And so I talked to him. I said, look, this is what I got. I got a daughter. She wants more training. Can we do that? Yes. So we did that, got her signed up on the spot, by phone, said, okay, we're going to start coming over on Saturdays to train, or Sundays, one day a week or whatever. And so initially the first couple times, was fine. She got assessed and he worked with her. And then after that, it became progressively more difficult to stay consistent with the coaching. It's like there was always something that came up, or a session had to be canceled, or this or that. So long story short, that just didn't work out. Eventually, we just ditched that effort because part of development is consistency, right? I mean, if you're going to build on something, first you have to have a foundation, and you can't get a foundation when you're training, with a private coach once a month because, something came up or whatever. So we abandoned that idea, and I started looking locally. So I talked to people in the club. This is when London was still a part of the select team, okay? So I talked to people in the club here on the coast. Hey, do you know of any private coaches? Do you know any people? So, they kind of shot me a couple of names. She trained with them a few times, and kind of more of the same. It just wasn't a priority, it seemed like. I mean, she was young. She wasn't that young. She might have been, 10, right? But, she was young, but she was old enough to be falling behind developmentally, right? Because the longer you wait, the further behind kids get, and then you have to work harder to bridge that gap. But there wasn't a real enthusiasm that I found with, training her. I'm a person, I thrive on consistency, sort of on routine. So I said, okay, we want every Tuesday at 6, can we just get on your schedule? And it just seemed like it was never a possibility. A lot of the coaches, they were doing it just on the side. It was either summertime or they were doing it for, extra money, but not a real passion, it seemed like, for really developing what we saw in her, right? Yeah. So that we went through several coaches because of that. It's like they would train and then they'd have to cancel, or somebody else would be in that slot. And, I was working, my husband was working at the time. So we just couldn't make that work. So we just kind of had to keep searching and searching and searching for these private opportunities that kind of never panned out initially until fortunately someone had mentioned to us guest play opportunities. Maybe we can guest play with some other teams in the area, right? So that way we can get the coaching, but also play in sort of the team environment. Okay. So we ultimately ended up going that direction with her, finding some opportunities to guest play sometimes with older girls and stuff like that to at least get the ball rolling. But ultimately, of course, as we'll talk about as well, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough, and it wasn't going to be enough to propel her to where she was trying to go, which was, playing at a higher level, ultimately college and then beyond. But that's where we started at least. And other communities might be different. There may be private coaches out there that are really good, that are, interested in coaching your child, and they can be at least a good starting point. Now, I think it is important to understand, though, that private coaching brings something different to the table than team play, right? From a technical standpoint, a private coach can work on your touches and your passes and that kind of thing. But it is also important to play with a team that is higher level if possible, because that's how you learn the game of soccer, and that is how you elevate your soccer IQ. Knowing, sort of thinking through moves, almost like a chessboard. If I do this, then they do that, and then I do this. So that also requires an element of team play as well. But yeah, that's where we started. And then, now we have an amazing private coach, and I have found that as kids, as they get more into it, and as they elevate their level of play, I found that it has become easier to find opportunities for things like private coaching and guest play opportunities. So I don't want parents to be discouraged because it's so hard in the beginning, because there are people who may not see what you see in your child. There are people that may be like, well, that's just a waste, or too young, there, et cetera. Everybody's path can look different. But I think if it's what you want for your child, then you really do have to go on the hunt for it. You have to create. I have this saying that, if an opportunity isn't available, sometimes you have to create it, right? And so that's just, and you have to base what you create off of the specific needs of your child, right?
So let me interject right here, because a lot of times it's easy to just go to the solution, right?
Right.
But a lot of people get lost in, so to speak, the wash process. What are some things that you would say are red flags when hiring a private coach? Like, if you notice these things straight out the gate, like, just run for the hills. Like, don't spend any more money. Like, just find another option. What are some things that you've noticed are things that you should stay away from when finding or seeking a private coach for development?
Right. I think that, unfortunately, when it comes to private coaches, I think that's a little bit trial and error, because you have coaches of all different abilities and all different levels, and they may have different personalities.
Yeah.
And depending on the temperament of your child, there may be this excellent coach who tends to be a little bit more abrasive, and that's very effective for a certain type of child with a certain temperament, but maybe that's not the temperament that's not the temperament, that your child needs, right? And so I think a little bit of a trial and error, but definitely the first thing is you definitely got to ask questions. You get out there and you get references. You talk to people. Hey, how is his coach? What do you think about him? Is he reliable? Is she reliable? That's the biggest thing right there for me in the beginning. Because if I am working hard outside of my day-to-day job to make this happen, then I don't want to have to be chasing you down, right?
Yeah.
If we say our time is Tuesday at 7, I'm going to have my child there. So I need you to do your best to be available, right? So that's the first thing. So it's not exactly necessarily a red flag. It's something to look for with the coach, right? Are they committed to the process, right? Nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows, where your child is going to end up. Nobody knows where my child is going to end up. I know that she has potential, but, we don't know how far this is going to go. We know what our goal is, and we know what we believe, but you have to have a coach who is committed to the process with your child. And that's something that I think after working with a coach for a couple of times, you can actually pick up on, right? And I think it's also important to talk to your child about their experience. Did you enjoy that? Do you feel like you learned?
Yeah.
What didn't you like about it, right? That type of thing, okay? Oh, he yelled, oh, he cursed, or have a dialogue, right, with your child. That's going to be important, because sometimes, and this isn't just for soccer, this is sort of what I tell my patients too, I was like, sometimes you give up on the person, you give up on the coach, you give up on the doc, you give up on whatever, but you don't give up on the process, right? So just because that coach may not be right for your child doesn't mean you give up on it. You just have to find somebody that your child jives with, and that takes trial and error. So that's something. The other thing that I think is important to look for in a coach is your child developing? Are they getting better, right? Are you watching their touch, right? And it's better. Their dribbling, is it better? Are they faster? Are they excited about it? That's another thing, okay? Because kids who are developing and they have a good coach, they get excited, and then you see them doing more work on their own at home.
Yeah.
Right. So those are all the things to look for that I look for in a coach. And as far as red flags, I think it would be the opposite of that. If you have somebody who's just going through the motions, somebody who is just, trying to make a little bit of extra money, they don't show any real passion for it. They seem aggravated, they're impatient with your child. Because like I said, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Your child isn't going to step on the pitch and then in 2 sessions suddenly they can dribble great and they can shoot great. It is consistency, it is drudgery, it is all those things. And if you have a young child who's willing to walk through that drudgery in order to get better, you have to have a coach who's willing to walk through it with you, right? My daughter's present private coach, we knew him because he was previously a coach of my older daughter's team. And he was amazing because I saw him elevate the level of play for the entire team, right? So I knew he was a good guy, I knew he was a great coach. What we love about him with her is he is constantly challenging her. And he's very open about the fact that she excites him, right? So he's always trying to think about new ways to challenge her and new things to do because it's fun for him. Right? That's what you want, is you want a coach that is so invested in your child and their development. If your child is excited, you want that coach to match their energy, right? Because then it's just going to elevate the entire process. And so that's fun, and so it's almost become like this thing to where, like, we take her to practice, he's trying to challenge her, he keeps her extra, it's supposed to be an hour, it may turn into an hour and a half because he's having fun. And then when she goes to a tournament or something and she plays and she shows well, I send him videos because, that's your handiwork. That's what you did. And so it really is, we talk about community a lot with Project Further, and it really is about it's a communal effort to elevate the level of play of that child, and then, sort of secondarily, the whole culture of girls soccer in this region.
I love how you talk about the synergy between all parties involved, with coach, and you did end up finding a great advocate in that space with Coach Q, who we will have on the season, an episode this season to talk more about that experience. But the synergy that you guys shared, right? As a parent, one, was that reassuring for you that you were going in the right direction? And two, what was some of his advice? Because I know even within my own journey of development, some of my biggest mentors, so to speak, or lighthouses, some would say, were people who gave me what they could, but then gave me the map to the next step.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So
important.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so important. I mean, it's important to have people, right? It's important to have a tribe, for lack of a better word, so to speak. We talk about a lot, like with Coach Q, that we're going to meet in a future episode, about how he was the first one who said she's not where she needs to be, right? And just think for a minute about that, right? Like you're a parent and this is your child, right? And as an outsider, as a coach, you have to be the one who says, yeah, she's not, this is not good, right? Essentially, right? Because as a parent, that's what you hear. It's like, forget all the positive things. All I'm hearing is like, okay, this is not good, okay? And so having someone who is willing to be honest and say, I think she has potential, but it's going to be work to get her not to the next level, just to where she should be, right? On the level with other kids in other areas, at this age, right? And so having him sort of be that first person who made me aware that was critical. All right. Now the work came with, and he made some introductions and he made some recommendations and that kind of thing. And he helped to facilitate options for us, which was important because it just gave, because if he would have just put that out there, right? Like if he wasn't someone who was really invested in trying to help us and he would have just dropped that bomb, I might have just thrown up my hands and said, well, I don't know what else to do because, all this was foreign to me, right? I didn't know about, I didn't even know really what he meant, right? But he went further and he said, when I said, okay, well, what do we need to do? He said, well, you need to try to go to where the coaches are. You need to go to where kids are developing. Okay, where is that? Oh, it's 3 hours north. Are you willing to do that? I was like, we'll do whatever. And then he made the introduction, right?
Yeah.
And so having him in our corner to facilitate that was important. So finding people that even if they don't have those connections or they aren't people who can kind of do that much, people that you can just talk to frankly about it. You can bounce things off of and say, listen, well, what do I need to do next? Well, what do you think about this is important, right? And Coach Q is, he coaches at the college level and other things like that. And he's a good friend that I'll still sort of talk to and bounce things off of.
Yeah.
Her private coach is Coach Nick, right? Who was the one who was a coach of my older daughter. He is my day-to-day. He is our day-to-day guy, right? To where we say, listen, we don't have practice with the club today. She wants to come train with you, right? Or we're out for summer. We want to train with you, right? He's the one who's like, okay, let me continue to challenge her. We are going to see her play at the highest of levels if she continues to that. And you also have to be conscious about not just what people say, not just what they say, but what they do. Like I said, he puts in extra time. When he talks about her, he says, we, right? We are going to see her play at the highest levels, those kinds of things. So, he's invested.
So
right?
let's stay right there for a second, because, in the world of athletics, especially when a kid has talent, right?
Right.
Nobody wants to take their hand off. Like, how do y'all establish the boundaries and responsibilities of all these parties involved, where there's a time and season where she will be dedicated more to your guidance versus the private coach, or, the private coach being okay with the day-to-day coach having a say. And now there's still travel ball coaching and any other, she's in a lot of different ponds that feed her, but how do you establish boundaries for each person involved?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. And I think that's a great analogy. She's in a pond and lots of people feed her. And that is really by design, it wasn't by accident. I mean, we've been fortunate, we've been blessed really to have people that we could reach out to and create this environment for her, right? Which is nurturing in lots of different regards, right?
Yeah.
But that was by design. And I think that there's a word that I use all the time that my kids, they get sick of me using it, but then I hear them say it, right? You have to be intentional. You have to be intentional about what it is you're trying to create. And it all starts with the knowledge of what you need, right? Like you don't know what you don't know. So first thing is, as a parent, you have to educate yourself on, okay, where are we? And what do we need to do first? Okay, they need development. What kind of development? Find somebody you trust. What kind of development? Well, her technical ability with the ball needs to improve. Okay, let me figure out where to go for that. Okay, found a person for that. They're good synergy, good rapport. They're committed. I trust what they say. That's my person for that. Okay, they're great with the ball now. Now, what about opportunities to play? Who can I reach out for that? Let me go on the hunt for that person. Oh, there's a coach out of New York who's always looking for guest players. Okay, well, let's go do that. Oh, that was a great opportunity. It was a great environment. They were very supportive. Okay, so they're in the pond, right? So it's a situation where as you're building it, part of it is the synergy and the rapport with your child and with your family, but also with the program, right? With the plan, okay? So that's why everybody who is a part of our sphere, right, of our atmosphere, when it comes to Project Further, when it comes to London, they meet a very specific need, right? A very piece. And so, yes, they're private coaches, but they serve completely different roles, right? We don't need another day-to-day coach because we have Coach Nick.
Yeah.
And he's amazing, and he's getting her where she needs to be, and he's committed, and he's taken ownership of this process because he sees something in her, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we wanted. We want somebody who believes in her as much as we do, right? And who can make time for her, even if it's outside of what we normally do. So we have that. You know, we have the person that I trust, that I go to for guidance in terms of, because of his experience in the environment right now, right? Which is Coach Q. She has her club coach and her club team, you know, with GA. That is for her consistent development on the team level, right? Because she's playing with other high-level girls, iron sharpens iron, but even more so than that, that team goes and it plays teams that are even better than our team, right? And that's important. And that's an important distinction because you have to be in an environment where that is the focus, where the focus is on a culture of development. That is actually the theme of our club. That's our tagline, culture of development. We go out and we play teams from Texas and from St. Louis that are some of the best in the country, and we don't always win, right? There are lots of times when we didn't, right? But I can see such growth over the past 2.5 seasons in my daughter that it's it's insane, right? So that coach feels that need, right? That's our club. And so when you're intentional about building these opportunities, then you go out and you say, okay, well, what else does she need? So just to kind of give you an example, like I said, we have the private coaching for when we're not doing the team, right? So she plays with coaches, you know, plays with her team and trains 2-3 times a week, 2 hours from home each way, okay? Yeah. When she's not doing that, or if something happens, it's rained out, or she has a school project and she can't make the trip, we're training with Nick, okay? That's her private day-to-day coach. If there's something going on, I have a question about it, I need some guidance, I'll reach out to Q, okay? So as London was continuing to develop, we kind of felt like, okay, well, she's great with her team, but you have all these higher level girls because we've seen them, right? Iron sharpens iron. I've seen girls that are even before I was like, GA is, you know, our team in GA, Girls Academy in Baton Rouge is it. This is the best team we've ever seen, best team we've ever played on. And that's true. But then after seeing teams that were even better, we're like, that's where we got to be. Yeah. It's not enough to be the best player on your team. You got to be better than those girls because they're all trying to play D1 soccer. They're all trying to go USU's national team. They're all trying to play pro, right? So then I started saying, where can we go to be on a team like that outside of our day-to-day, right? And so then we found, like I said, I look for guest play opportunities for that. She's played with teams out of New York and beyond. She plays on a team out of Orlando, very high-level girls. For a while, she was playing on a U19 team. She was playing with girls that were 18. And every time we would go to a tournament, we were playing in the category with girls who were 18. They were under 19, right? And these are college showcases. So not only are you dealing with playing with bigger, stronger, faster girls, you're in the environment where it's big and it's loud and you have college coaches that are watching because that helps you develop composure, right? So that was another little piece of the development puzzle that we felt like she could use because, like we talked about before, we tried to get her to play with boys, which would also give you bigger, stronger, faster, but we hit a brick wall with that, right? No, you can't play with boys. Okay, well, you know what? We're going to figure out a workaround to still get her experience playing with bigger, stronger, faster, learning to body people and get bodied and stay on your feet, right? And so we had to find that. And so it's all about, like I said, creating that environment where all the little pieces of the puzzle come together to give your child exactly what they need.
Now, I love this as we get close to wrapping this episode because you've given a lot of great information. And for us, we want parents to focus on the fact of identifying, you know, the pathway to more development and who those people could be in your lives, right? And your kids' success. I wanna challenge you. Okay. I know this is a little off script.
Okay.
All right. But I would love for you to leave 3 tips for this subject matter. 3 tips to how to find great or your coach and tribe, right, for development. What would be 3 things that stand out to you? that you feel every parent listening, watching should know?
Okay. 3 tips. I think the first tip is know what you don't know. Know what you don't know. You have to seek guidance and information from people who know more. And that's tough. That's tough to go to somebody and say, hey, I think my kid has something. Will you tell me what you think? Because it's not always going to be favorable. Like with me, it was not favorable when Coach Q was like, she could be good, but she's not right now,
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. Know what you don't know, okay? And be willing to put yourself out there. And it's all part of one, part of tip one. Be willing to put yourself
Yeah.
out there to get the information that you need to go forward, okay? Number 1. Number 2, find a community. Find a community, because almost every question that you've asked, every step that you were trying to take, someone has already done it. And that was really the premise behind Project Further, right? That's why we created this community, because not a weekend goes by that I don't talk to parents or meet parents, some of which have girls much older than mine, who are asking questions about, well, how did you do that? Well, where did you find that? Well, how did you hear about this team to guest play? Those kinds of things, right? So find a community. Find people that you can bounce things off of, that can give you good information, or at least a starting point, right? And the third tip, I would say, is don't get discouraged, because it is like you always hear me say, it is a marathon and not a sprint.
Yeah.
There are going to be a lot of no's before you hear yes. There are going to be things that you thought were going to be amazing that you tried to create for your daughter that turned out less than amazing, or were downright frustrating or disappointing. But just know that if you have a goal in mind in terms of the process and the environment that you want to create for your child, then you have to do it brick by brick, piece by piece, and that just takes time. And so you can't get discouraged, and you can't get frustrated, and you can't think it's going to be quick. Okay? So and I think if you go into it understanding that, then when those no's come your way, then immediately you think about, okay, well, let's figure out a workaround. Okay, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
We're going to make it happen. We've committed to making it happen. That didn't work great. So let's do our plan B, right? So I think those are just 3 sort of general tips that parents can sort of follow, just to get them started on the path towards greater development for their child. And then, of course, we're going to talk more about all of it later in terms of teams and how to figure out if you have the right coach, or
Right.
if it's time to move on from the team that you're on or the coach that you're on. All that kind of stuff. We'll go into more detail later.
Well, I think this was a great episode. I think
It was fun.
We're giving such a great amount of insight to, just how to take it further. Mm-hmm. And you wanna take us out of this episode?
Absolutely. All right. Until next time, keep striving, keep pushing, but always further.
And subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
Yes, we'll see y'all in the next one.